Love has been in the air. It's Valentine's week. But after that defeat to Manchester City at the weekend, is there any love lost for Jack Grealish? Maybe a poll will be put out on Twitter. This is Talk of the Trinity.
Until you break down.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Talk of the Trinity podcast. I was going to link into the intro, but I thought it would go a little too much Paddy McGuinness on Take Me Out. So I will just confirm that I am still the Lord of Love, Baz Barrett. And with me, as always, get that mental image out your head, is Mr. Trinity himself, Will Forrest, who always rises above such... Well, you can finish your own sentence. You're already imagining it, I know. So I'm going to leave that to you. But a place you don't have to imagine what goes on is our Twitter page at Talk Trinity, whereby you will be kept up to date with all the Villa news on and off the field. May even be a poll or two in relation to past events, upcoming events, rumours, speculation, maybe a little bit of truth in there. We just don't know. Go and check it out. You can see what all the fuss is about on our YouTube channel, whereby you can view all of our delightful past episodes. Or if you just prefer the audio version, or if you're in a train, car, automobile, other transport choice of your own choosing, then you can go on
air balloon.
To be fair, if you are listening to this episode on a hot air balloon, please do contact us and we will give you a shout out. Unless your name's Willy Fogg, and then I think that's kind of been done. But audio episodes can be found Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. We are also on FanHub and probably some other places by the time this episode has reached the airwaves, or you're listening to it 5 years in the future. Just because, you wanted to remember what was going on the Valentine's week and you're telling the story of your loved one. Maybe it is a futuristic How I Met Your Mother, where you're saying, just listen to Will and Baz in the morning. And then, well, again, we'll let your mind wander as to how that
And
finished.
it's going to be legend. Wait for it. And I hope you're not lactose intolerant because the next word is dairy. Legendary. Yeah, super.
Well, speaking of something that wasn't legendary, unfortunately, was events at Manchester City on Sunday afternoon, where Villa were the visitors and went away empty-handed, like a suitor who sent out a Valentine's Day card and got nothing in return. We went back down the motorway with 0 points after losing 3-1 to Man City. You may have listened to the preview and thought, well, you thought we were going to lose anyway, so not really much to talk about here. But in terms of how the game went, from my perspective, even though I thought Man City were going to win, I did think that was because a moment of quality was going to change the game for Man City. One of their players was going to step up, and have that moment of magic, or, well, a few moments of magic based on my score prediction. I think what was disappointing, I'll throw that word out there, even though I expected to lose, I was still slightly disappointed by the fact that they didn't really have to get out of second gear, did they, Man City? I didn't think, to get those 3 points. Is that how you viewed the game, Will, or am I just being a little harsh?
I think that we gifted them all of their goals, if I'm being completely honest. I recapped them this morning. Rodri got away a little bit too easy at the set piece. I know Booba tried to get back to him, but I remember the commentary at the time was the header must have been too powerful for Martinez. Maybe it was. I wasn't in goal at the time.
Well, I think he got a good free run at it, Rodri. And I think after the game, I think Watkins admitted that it was his man that he didn't pick up, and kind of,
What a
yeah,
wally.
you're looking at it maybe in terms of your near post. You think you can do better, goalkeeper perhaps, but he wasn't that far out, and he had a free run. So
I think as well with it though, the trajectory of having to crane your head round to sort of get, because he'd ran further than the front post, Stanley, so he really had to get his head round onto it. If he'd been more in line with the near post and it had gone straight in, yeah, understand it. But it wasn't the greatest of goals to concede. The second one as well. Well, there was the mix-up at the back, wasn't there, between Chambers and Emmy, and Emmy did very well to hold Haaland up then, but Ashley Young should have known that Gundogan was behind him because Gundogan loves scoring against us.
yep.
And then the third one, well, when you're talking about Valentine's Day and you see an old love who you've still got a soft spot for, not that I know what that was like, but you see an old player that you still got a soft spot for, and then they go and do that. There, you realise that they were a cheat. They're a dirty diver. That they in the end they caused more harm to themselves than anybody else did. And then he has the audacity to go off celebrate. Nah, not happy about the penalty at all. Very minimal contact from the actual proper golden boy of Aston Villa, our greatest youngster of the last 20 years, Jacob Ramsey. Yeah, okay. And then obviously Mahrez managed to smash home the penalty, and it's a bit hit and miss with him, isn't it, as to whether he scores penalties or not.
Well,
We could have done with him smashing it over the bar like he did later on when he was 1-on-1.
well, the pressure was on him after he took it from Haaland, so I think it would have been fun if he'd missed. Would have been
Yeah,
fun
and
for
then
us.
I mean, the one positive to come out of the game really is that Harden did not get the better of Mings. We can
That is
safely
true.
say that
Yep.
over the two games as well. Um, I mean, the thing is, you're right. They didn't get out of second gear. Did we think that they would have to really? Yeah, we probably did because we've been playing well recently. But when you see that there's no Mings, you start to think, okay, there's just this. There's just this knowledge, isn't there, really, that if Mings isn't playing, the chances are we're going to lose. We don't look the same team without Tyrone Mings. But the way we played since Unai's come in, being strong defensively, at times getting 10 men behind the ball and that, you felt that we'd be able to defend well enough and that we would create chances. And of course, Watkins got his goal. Great little bit of interception play from Douglas Luiz and the through ball. 5 assists for him this season, which is within the top 10 in the Premier League. There's only about 4 players or 5 that have got more assists than him this year now. And then Jean Duran's thunderous effort that hit the crossbar, nearly broke the crossbar. If that would have gone in, what an introduction to life in the Premier League for that young man. He looks like he could be quite the player with a
Yep.
bit of a run in a team. What
Yep.
about you? Do you think John Duran is gonna show what he can do before the end of the year, or do you think that he's going to be a little bit longer that we have to wait?
I mean, I was happy just to see him on the pitch after the pre-game administrative error, whereby we forgot, it appears, to name him on our subs list and had to get special dispensation from the Premier League to add him on at a later date, which I think in terms of that's a bad enough mistake in itself. But when you've got 2 goalies on the bench and you haven't named all of your subs, then that kind of really adds it up. It's a bit like a head count on a school trip. Must have been, when you pair him back onto the coach, and it's like, yep, you two, God, who are we missing? Who's gone? So so I was glad to see him on the pitch quite literally, because it didn't look like we were going to have him available for the game with about an hour to go to kick off. I think in terms of, it was almost a perfect no pressure game for him in terms of, the game was pretty much lost by that point. Man City aren't at the top intensity experience of a insert word here stadium. Just, in old-fashioned Harry Redknapp, go and run about a bit was basically what he did. And, he had a part to play in the goal in terms of chasing down the initial soiree forward and released the ball to Luis from memory. And, the shot was very good. I mean, the cliche is he looked lively when he came on. And, you got to start somewhere. Do I think he'll be starting before the end of the season? Probably not. You'd think in terms of Watkins is going to be that first choice striker for the rest of the season. He is scoring goals under Unai Emery. I think that's 3-3 now. So you have to expect Emery is going to keep faith in Watkins, especially. And we don't like to mention it on the show, but when it has got rid of your man, Danny Ings, another demonstration that Watkins is his current number one choice. Although you would expect that we are going to bring another striker in the summer. But at the moment, for the rest of the season, you would expect that pattern to continue. Watkins starting, Duran coming off the bench to try and cause a little bit of mayhem in the second half, depending on what has been going on in the game up to that point. I mean, your point in respect of Mings, I think, was the key one for the game, really, because as I think we've said previously, you can make arguments about, should Mings be in the team if we're challenging for Europe? Is he got a long-term future? Is he going to, potentially be offered a new deal when his current one expires? But Sunday demonstrated the reality of where we are at the moment is we are a worse team when he's not in it. And, you can say, no, we're only going to be top 10, 10th mid-table with him. But, well, that's what we are. So in terms of, I think Chambers it was a bit of a hiding to nothing, really, for him in terms of, I think it's his first start since August, thrown in at Man City. And, as we mentioned in terms of the goals, he had a torrid time against a half-fit Haaland. And, you would have imagined Mings fully fit, giving Haaland a bit of what for, memories of the September game came back into the mind in the build up to this one. So I think that was a massive factor. Well, it was a factor. I maybe won't go massive because I maybe said we'd lose even with Mings in the team. But I think it definitely reduced the chance of us getting something positive. And it's in terms of your cliches of you make no mistakes, take your chances when you can. We made plenty of mistakes. We had a couple of half chances in the first half that we didn't do anything with. Mainly, you see the good and bad of Leon Bailey in about 5 seconds of each other. Good kind of getting in those positions. Bad when he attempts to shoot. He's not a clinical finisher, and you'd expect in terms of, as we said, address the position in the summer, centre forward, and Bailey you think will be maybe more used off the wing, cutting in next season, you'd expect. But, for present purposes, he is there supporting Watkins. But on the plus side, Luis didn't get booked. He tends to against kind of former club when things are not going right for him. And, and a nice assist, as you said. So the second, we won the second half, which everybody knows is the most important result in football. So
last goal wins. Last goal wins.
Yep.
That's the rules of the street.
Yep, jumpers for goalposts. And to be fair, as you said, if Duran's shot would have been any harder, they would have been using jumpers for goalposts on the basis of the bar going down. But
I mean, you're saying about the positives. You've forgotten one. You're probably gonna do. And I'm stealing your thunder here a little bit. John McGinn's back. John McGinn's back. Put himself about. Didn't have a bad cameo either. And Unai Emery said that he's keeping him as captain. Doesn't see any need to take that captain's armband off him. And whilst John's had his doubters recently, but not recently really, pre-Unai era, he's been doing a lot better recently, hasn't he, before the injury? And I think a lot of fans were disappointed that he got injured because of how well he'd been playing. Happy to see him back. Well, I'm sure you are. You'd got a picture of him by your bedside table for Valentine's, ain't you? But,
Yeah, you don't want to see what I got in my wallet. But in terms of where we are as a squad at the moment, all hands on deck currently. So in that sense, happy to have him as an option. I mean, I'll tease the question for you that we'll answer when we do the Arsenal preview of, do you see him walking back into the team? And if so, where would you play him? If you do have him in the starting 11 against Arsenal, if he's fit. So leave that as a teaser for later on, because I've kind of got my views, as you no doubt be aware. But yeah, I mean, in terms of Emre's given him that demonstration of faith. Whether he's going to play every week, I'm not entirely sure. But, he's geeing him up. And, mentioned in terms of Watkins is under a bit of form under Emre. There's players who have lifted their game. He is one of them. So hopefully that positivity can continue as he makes his way back to full fitness. And, I for one, I'm always happy to see the best arse in football back on the field, and that you might think that's a Valentine's reference. I will leave that for you to decide. But in terms of things that were decided during the course of this week or announced this week, it probably happened long before. You may have seen that the owners announced that another club has entered into the V Sports empire of Vitória from Portugal. Have been, I think, a minority shareholding or significant minority shareholding purchase by the owners. Previously announced in terms of MLS team is going to be part of that empire as well, starting in a couple of years. Interest in Egypt as well. So a little bit of an empire building in terms of the Villa owners. Does it make any difference to us at this stage?
Well, it will when the sale goes through, won't it? When we've acquired Astoria, Victoria, and we can send some of our youth players out there on loan, I would imagine, and also we'll get first pick of the spoils of their youngsters. I imagine that NSWE will put a lot of resources into them. I think it's 46% shareholding, isn't it?
That's what
Yeah, and they'll build up the youth there, hopefully as well, like they have been developing at the Villa. We've seen what they're doing at Bodymore and with the new training complex as well in the inner city. So I think it'd be potentially a very good feeder club for us. And I think the same will happen with the interest in whichever other leagues there is. You say about the Las Vegas Villains, the rumour name for the team over in the MLS. And then if there's interest as well in Egypt, I'm sure we'll see a lot more hand in hand in regards to loans and life experiences for those younger players, but also us being able to get the pick of the very best players from, the Americas, from Africa, really, because they'll be attracting the best players there. And again, the same with Portugal. So it'll all be good. But we wait to see. I mean, when we have our little pre-season competition with the four teams, I still don't think we'll win it. But that's just the Aston Villa fan in me.
Yep. That's our, well, I would say our European trophy. Greatest chance of doing that, but it wouldn't be European, it'd be a worldwide trophy potential there. But I think in terms of training is an interesting point, because I think in terms of warm weather training, kind of summer training, we give that possibility increase. Obviously we went to, was it Dubai we went to during the World Cup, so we'll be able to ring a few favors to go to Portugal, the US, Egypt. So that'll be, good in terms of that side of things. But yeah, I mean, in terms of, there's so much competition nowadays amongst the big clubs for spotting young players early that we have to do something slightly different, go in a slightly different direction, and we'll see how it goes. In terms of the owners obviously have the money, touch wood. So, it's worth a go. And, in terms of, they're looking to give something back to their respective communities in Egypt and America, and Portugal's a nice place to go as well. So we'll
Wow, yeah, Fernando Nelson can become the head coach over there, and we can bring him in when Unai's done his magic. But as you say, that we'll have that world competition now, so hopefully Emmy won't want to leave
No.
after
Well,
his comments this week.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of touch upon his comments briefly, it's not a surprise, is it? Really, in terms of a world-class player wanting to play in the Champions League and play for the highest trophies.
And I think the thing is, this summer is going to be, and I mentioned it in our little WhatsApp group, I think there's probably a lot more teams that could get him this summer based upon what they want to do. And I think there'll be quite a bit of movement to be able to accommodate a world-class keeper like him. And I mentioned Chelsea, and it can be said that they've got Kepa and they've got Mendy. Neither of them are better than Martinez, and Mendy's not going to want to sit round on the bench forever at Chelsea. You've got Man City, where Ederson's looked a little bit shakier this season and the back end of last year. Still a fantastic keeper, but if someone else came in for him, would they look at a Martinez? Would PSG potentially look at? I don't think they would with Donnarumma, but if Messi leaves, which is the massive rumour, and he goes back to Barca, would he be saying, "Here, I know a keeper. I've got a mate."
Yeah, I think
it could be. It might be that someone's cashing on him if the right offer comes in. I hate to say that, but if you can get 80 million for him or so, then, and you'd want more than Chelsea paid for Kepa, but if you can get that sort of money and then get in a very good goalkeeper anyway, you never know. It might be worth it. I hope he doesn't go. I hope he stays for a long time. I hope, he continues to be one of the main characters, one of the captains that we have, and leads us to glory. But I don't think you'd begrudge him.
No, and it may be taken out of our hands, as you've hinted, in terms of an offer comes in or his agent makes him aware of interest and he says he wants to go. Then, it's difficult standing his way if you're going to be making, you'd expect at least a 4-time return on your investment. I mean, for me, Bayern is one to keep an eye on in terms of their goalkeeping position. Yeah, as you said, you don't want him to go. You wouldn't blame him. I suspect in terms of maybe similar to a Declan Rice situation, whereby there was rumours of him leaving last summer, kind of persuaded for one last go in terms of West Ham were riding high after last season being in Europe. Investment in the summer, looking to step on, and now because of West Ham not having a particularly great season, the expectation is he'll go in the summer, Declan Rice. So I can see maybe if we can get a similar situation with Martinez, Emre saying, look at these players we're going to be bringing in the summer. We're looking to really push, give us one more year, see where we are. He would have been there 4 years at that point at the end of next season, maybe 5. From time flies when you're watching a mid-table side. But, I think in terms of goalkeeper, we'll be setting records, however those records may be. So, we'll be part of that. But a place where many a record has been set is Villa Park. And that is where we are going to be on Saturday, 12:30, where we welcome the record-breaking in terms of the Invincible season. Will they be breaking records this season? Arsenal. At time of recording, we are recording in advance of the Wednesday night game between Arsenal and Man City. So at time of recording, Arsenal are top. And if they've been banged by City, they don't know this yet. So they are still in blissful ignorance. Or if they beat Man City, then their happiness is only just, they can't imagine the happiness that they're going to be. But for the happiness that we are going to have on Saturday, how extensive do you think that is going to be? Or do you think this is going to be part 2 of the week where we lose to the top 2 teams in the league? From a Villa perspective, how do you think we're going to be approaching this?
I think we approach it in the same way as we have approached all the other games under Emery, where we put out an industrious team that have got creativity in there and go for them and try to get the win. I mean, you've got the argument really in regards to what you were saying earlier. You've potentially got the battle of the 2 best arses in football, John McGinn and Arsenal. I think they'd probably say they're the best arse at the moment, being top of the league. I know
Well,
you'd disagree.
I do,
Um,
definitely.
I know you'd disagree. But, I mean, the thing for us is this game tonight that they've got against Man City will obviously massively affect them because they've been on a bit of a shaky run as recently, which bodes brilliantly for the Villa, not because we know what we're like
Well,
against.
certainly a way to beat Arsenal, I think, was revealed by Brentford on Saturday, whereby just give VAR a call, just distract them, delete the piece of software which draws a line kind of over the field. just do that. I mean, I think, we do have experience at Villa Park of technology not working. So
didn't go over the line, mate. Not all the ball went over the line.
Well, the tech said it didn't. So I think in terms of if we can get, a bit of, return on investment in that regard, then I think, we should be investigating that.
I mean, looking at Arsenal over the last 5 games, nobody would have expected them to get the return of points that they did. Or sorry, they probably would have expected that return of points, probably a little bit more. But the actual results, so they beat Spurs 2-0 away in a very good performance in the North London derby. They were quality. Eddie Nketiah, their top scorer, was causing no end of problems, and Martin Odegaard as well, pulling the strings, is having a fantastic season for Arsenal, along with many other players. They then go and beat Man City 3-2 with the aforementioned Nketiah getting that last goal.
For our Manchester listeners, I will say it was Man United. They beat
Man United. They lost to Man City after that, though, 1-0. Man United, Man City, doesn't matter. There were goals galore in those games. Then they lost to Everton. And whilst I think a lot of people thought, well, Everton could do it because the new manager bounce, which this season seems to apply to some teams, but not to others anymore.
Does depend on the manager. Does depend on the manager, though. I mean, in terms
depends
of
on the team and all, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're not a Southampton podcast, but bad choice of manager there. I think in terms of Nathan Jones, question marks were raised when he was hired, and yeah, they were answered, but just not in the way that Southampton fans may have hoped for. But on the plus side, we won there, so.
And now they get Jesse Marsh to look forward to. Those lucky Saints.
Yeah.
They're going to need the Saints to help keep them up. But there we go. Brentford was a 1-1 draw, obviously, for Arsenal as well. You mentioned the VAR difficulties. But those last couple of teams they played are a little bit more physical. And maybe that's the way that we've got to go against Arsenal. Because they've got tonight's game is the hardest out of the next 5 that they've got for them, and that's no disrespect to us. Man City at home, they've then got us followed by Leicester away. Leicester have got an upturning fortune, of course. Then they've got Everton at home again, and then they're away to Bournemouth. So they'll be coming for us. They'll be hoping that all their players are on form again. Bukayo Saka, who's had a great season as well. But I think that if we dig our heels in, and we take our opportunities, all the football cliches again, that we can definitely get something out of this. But I'd like to see a few amendments to the starting lineup, if I'm being completely honest with you, for that industrious nature. And then as the game goes on and players start to get tired, you maybe then start to unleash the creativity and the pace of 1 or 2 players who could start on the bench after a poor run of form in the team.
Well, let's go straight into that starting 11. We teased it earlier. Does McGinn play for you?
He does. John McGinn plays for me. I'd have Emi Martinez in goal. Ashley Young would probably carry on at right back. He hasn't really put a foot wrong this year. I'd be starting with Luca Dean still at the moment at left back while Moreno gets used to playing. And obviously, if Mings is fit, you play Mings alongside Konsa. You definitely play Dean if Mings isn't fit, because I think Mings helps Moreno through the game. Boubacar Kamara and Douglas Luiz are nailed on. I'd have John McGinn on the right, where he was before he got injured. I would have JJ on the left. So Buendia drops to the substitutes bench, comes on when we need him to. And unlike you, I would start with Ollie Watkins and John Duran. I think, he's come on, he's shown endeavour, he's shown that he can be a bit of a handful, a bit of a beast. Let him start, let him batter Saliba and Gabriel, and then towards the end, you bring on Bailey, who's going to be chomping at the bit at that point to prove that he should have been starting, and go for that. Go for that 4-4-2, 4-2-2-2 team with those ones. What about you? Does Guinea, old meatball, love of your life, get back into the starting lineup? Is that his ass? Oh no, it's a Gareth Bale impression.
Yep. Well, we got to cater for all sorts on this show. We've made our way around a number of different teams and players, but McGinn does play for me. Similar to you, I would play him instead of Buendia. I think in terms of combination of McGinn's aggression and Ramsey's pace, I think is a good balance to start the game. And Kamara and Louise at the moment pick themselves in the centre of midfield. Yeah. And you can't see Emre changing his formation because he's played the same one pretty much every single game. So I think we've got to be expecting the same again. Mings is fit, he plays. I'd be tempted to play Cash ahead of Young, but I'm not sure in terms of what's going on the training field. Are the reasons why Young is being preferred to Cash? And I would play Bailey ahead of Duran. I mean, I'd similar reasons to you, but flip it the other way around. I mean, I'd play Duran, as I mentioned, in terms of the Man City game for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, get him on, have a run at the Arsenal backline, which has been pretty good, to be fair, the Arsenal backline. So
only 18 conceded in 16 matches. Goal a game, but still very good for him.
Yeah, and in terms of generally for championship winning teams, goal a game or under is usually where you're looking. And in terms of 21 games in the league, 18 goals conceded, so they're actually under a goal a game. I think in terms of
16 wins.
Only from what I can see, only Newcastle have a better defence in the league, which if you watched Newcastle for the previous 5 years, you never would have thought you'd say that. But they've certainly tightened up Arsenal. So, I give Bailey the start. But is there any better kind? But in terms of a bit of more experience for Bailey to begin with, and then bring Duran on at the end. So we've set the teams. We've mentioned a few of the Arsenal players. They are in good form. I mean, Arsenal was a bad result. Everton was a bad result for Arsenal. Everton, a bad result when they lost to Liverpool. But anyway, so like Man City, we said we tried to kid ourselves that we're playing them at the right time after they'd had a little hiccup in the previous couple of games. Arsenal, try to kid ourselves. We're playing them at the right time after a couple of hiccups in previous games. Score prediction time. Do you think we're going to get anything out of this game, or do you think it's going to be another nil point?
I think it's going to be 1 point each. I'm going to say that Arsenal will score because we're a little bit vulnerable at the back at the moment. I think they'll get 2 goals, but I think that we'll get that as well. And I can see big John Duran and Ollie Watkins being the goal scorers, especially Watkins on his hot streak of form at the moment. He'll be celebrating game 101 with another goal.
Well, got to keep that streak alive. I think in terms of it's going to be influenced by the game that is happening tonight, which we don't know the score of at time of recording. But I think Arsenal are going to win.
Boo.
Yeah, boo earns. Boo earns. But as you've mentioned, not the tightest at the back in terms of, Man City, few errors. Mings wasn't playing. I think if Mings doesn't play on Saturday, then I think we're in a bit of real trouble in terms of that. Mings, he'll be itching to get in the team if he is fit. I think 3-1 Arsenal. I mean, I think in terms of our record against Arsenal at home isn't great. I mean, the one game, you could say we won the most important game. Trezeguet, we thank you for your service. But generally, we do tend to go 3-down against Arsenal. Yeah, I don't think we're quite there yet. I think in terms of we are in that looking ahead to the summer phase in these type of games, looking at the players who are going to be around next year when you think we're going to be in a better position to compete in the games against the better teams in the league. And we've got a decent run of fixtures coming after the Arsenal game: Everton, Palace, West Ham, Bournemouth in a run of 4. So, you'd be hoping to pick up points in those games to maybe counteract the 2 defeats in a week that I am predicting that we are going to have. But in terms of things I am confident to predict that we will have is all the latest Villa news on the field, off the field, polls, previews, absolutely everything on our Twitter page at Talk Trinity. So go and check it out in advance of the game and after. Time is off. We've got plenty of time. And if you've got plenty of time, you can go to our YouTube channel to go and check out all of our previous episodes. Or if you're trying to kill time on the train, in your car, when you're commuting, when you're in the kitchen cooking, as I often do, have a listen to our audio podcast on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. We're also on FanHub. But before I pass you over to my co-host, Mr. Trinity, for his final thoughts, thank you very much for listening or watching, depending on how you're viewing this content this week. We really appreciate it, and all the interactions, subscriptions, likes, retweets, everything else you can do in the modern social media world. If you go in the game, enjoy the game. If you're watching the game, have a beer next to you, and I'll be back with you next week. Cheers for now.
Yep, cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. And let's hope that the weekend doesn't bring heartbreak like I've recently suffered when Danny Ings left, and that instead your love for the Villa continues to be unrivaled, like Baz's love for John McGinn. And we can say that we have beaten the best arse in football, and maybe it's going to be Baz's best arse that puts that blow to them and leaves them feeling rock bottom. Cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. He's Villa Arsenal till he dies. I'm Villa till I die. Up the Villa.